We are going to go on a museum stroll here because these are coins generally most of us cannot afford, but we can appreciate them as being some of our favorites.
Yeah.
And so if you want to go to the first slide, obviously
Everybody's favorite coins.
the most famous coin in all of numismatics, the number one coin in the 100 Greatest Ancient Coin book for 3 volumes now, is the Brutus Eid Mar done in 42 BC, representing the assassination of Julius Caesar on a coin. And the silver one is the first Eid Mar ever to bring over $1 million with the buyer's premium. So that's the very first silver Eid Mar ever to bring over $1 million. It is a fantastic coin. I actually was able to hold this coin, and it is spectacular. And it had a pedigree, long pedigree as well, perfectly centered. There was a group of Eid Mars that came out about probably 30 years ago that are all corroded, and that was because they were improperly cleaned. This obviously wasn't part of that group. So most Eid Mars these days, the corroded ones, I would say, are bringing between 150 and 250,000. I figured this was going to go for over $1 million. It probably should have gone for 1.5 because I heard that there was another collector who got cold feet at the last minute and didn't bid. And so there would have been more competition for this Eid Mar than was had at time. So I actually think it was a good valuation for what the client paid for it. The gold one, talked about often on this show, it is now the only one in private hands, sold for close to $2.4 million in 2020. And my father bought this for his client at the time, Barry Fierstein, out of a NAC auction for 120,000 Swiss francs back in 2004, I believe. Then Barry sold his collection back in like 2006, I believe, and it brought close to 400,000 Swiss francs. And then the owner of this coin at that time put it on display at the British Museum for about 10 years, took it off display, sold it in 2020 through NAC, and we bought it for $2.4 million all in. So the prices of ancient coins have definitely gone up in some capacity. What made this coin even more interesting, and it became much more important when the gold Eid Mar that Roma sold in 2019, 2020, something like that, that one got confiscated because Roma faked the pedigree on the coin, and that coin actually made it so that Roma had to close their doors for good, and they're now no longer in business. And that coin was returned. So there's only 3 gold in existence, one in a German museum, one that has now been returned to Greece, and this one now the only one in private hands. If you want to go to the next slide, one of my favorite coins of all time, and it's also my dad's favorite coin, is the Syracuse Decadrachms. And so you have 2 artists. The top one is by Kimon, and the bottom one is by Euenetos. And this is one of the largest Greek silver coins other than medallions that were issued. We know that these were probably not meant for circulation. These were meant to give out as gifts. We know that they struck them, then put the dies away for 20 years. Normally they'd keep striking coins so the dies would break apart. Well, the dies rusted. Then they brought the dies back out and restruck them 20 years later because they were such a popular type to collect in ancient times. And then you'd have rust marks, rust surfaces on the coins that they struck with the rusted dies later on. They're signed and unsigned dies. These are in the 5th century BC. And so the one on the top, you'll see on the dolphin, on the bottom, on the reverse. And that's the other thing too. Syracuse is always the quadriga first and the head of Persephone second. So they do this mainly just in Syracuse. And so the horse racing was the most important part. That's the obverse of the coin, which traditionally would be our head side. And here, the head side is the reverse of the coin. So, but on the dolphins, on the Kimon, you'll see the signature K-I-M-A right there. Probably hard to see in this video, but that's where it is. Sometimes these things can be double signed. Sometimes they can be triple signed by the artists as well. You have signed dies and unsigned dies as well. So all of that plays a part. Centering, metal quality, whether it has signatures or not signatures. So the one on the top, Kimons are rarer than Euenetoses as well. So they tend to bring more money. And a signed Kimon with perfect surfaces, perfectly centered. This coin is, close to $1 million coin. It's a really fantastic coin. I've held that coin in my hand as well. It's spectacular. If you go to the next slide, I think this is Mike's favorite.
This one is my favorite. I am just drawn to this coin. I don't know why.
So the Athens Tetradrachm, and that group of Athens there, that's we talked about that in a previous podcast with my father. That's in the 100 Greatest Ancient Coins Volume 3, where he redates all the coins of Athens. And so those are his dating right there, starting at the beginning with the civic mint and then running all the way through. You tend to have different, people always ask, like, why are some Athens more expensive than others? A lot of it comes down to when the coin was issued. And so based on the owl structure, structure and obviously the Athena structure as well, whether it has a full crest like this one does, you normally have to have a small head for the full crest to end up on the die. So a lot of times you just get partials of the crest. And then the way the owl shaped, you'll have different dating of the owl itself. But we now know this was the Morgan dollar of its day. These were issued all over the Greek world. If you had a lot of silver, you would issue these coins. We know that they were issued even in Judea because we've seen Athens Tetradrachms that actually have Jewish symbols on the cheek that was actually in the die issued at the time. So they were issued all over the place. And there are literally probably several million of these in existence today being traded. So they're everywhere. If we go to the next slide.
Love this coin.
One of my favorites, the facing Pantikapaion, done in the Black Sea in the 4th century BC. This is, most of the time you'll see these with the side profile of Pan. This is the 3/4 view. This one came up in NAC in 2021, I think it was. And I was the underbidder on the coin. And it ended up, this was the most expensive ancient coin ever to sell when it broke the record in 2012, when the Sheikh of Qatar bought it for, I believe, $3 million. And everybody thought he was going to lose money on this coin because he way overpaid for it. It was in the Prospero sale, very famous sale. I think it brought 3.2 million is actually what it brought all in. And when NAC got, the Sheikh died and the Sheikh's family gave all of their coins to NAC to sell. That is a man in love with his art. That's what they called it. So if you ever want to know who that was the Sheikh of Qatar. If you go to the next slide, coin that doesn't look pretty, but is extremely important, just like the very first coin with striated types. This is the very last coin issued by Rome. This is during what we call the Byzantine period.
I thought I saw a certain person on there.
So you have Christos on the obverse and you have the Emperor Constantine XI on the reverse. And this was done in 1453 at the siege of Constantinople. And this was the end of the Roman Empire. Remember, the word Byzantine is made up. It was made up by a modern scholar because they had their capital at Byzantium. So they became the Byzantine people, coined by somebody from I believe the 14th or 15th century. I think it was the 14th century. And on their coins, it actually says under God in Rome. So they considered themselves Romans. They didn't know what the word Byzantine meant. Very historical, but again, not very pretty. And then go to the next slide. A coin I am completely in love with. We've had this on the show before. This sold in the same auction as the Pantikapaion. I actually held this coin. It's actually gold medallion. Most gold medallions are all unique because they were made specifically by the emperor or high dignitary to pay to the soldiers in a large quantity of gold as a thank you or to keep them loyal to the emperor. And so here you have Probus, Hercules behind him and holding the club. And on the reverse, you have the emperor crossing probably the Rhine River with the river goddess below as he was entering to go fight the German tribes. And so this coin was just one of the most spectacular coins ever for me to hold. When I was viewing the Pantikapaion, the facing one, I viewed this one right after, and I considered this one much more exciting in my hands than the gold Pantikapaion. You go to the next slide, Mike. One of my favorites. This is a coin issued by Augustus, and you have the comet on the reverse with the words Divus Julius. And so that is a commemoration coin for the death of Julius Caesar. When Julius Caesar was assassinated, Augustus was his adopted son, Octavian at the time, and Augustus became the first Roman emperor after he defeated Brutus, Cassius, and eventually Mark Antony as well. And so here, at the time, there was a comet going overhead, and they saw that as Caesar's soul going across the heavens. And so this, not only for astrological reasons, is cool, but just all the dripping, symbolism that's on this coin and what it represented at the time. So, and if you go to the next slide, another popular coin that I really enjoy is the Bar Kokhba coins. So Bar Kokhba was between 132 and 135 AD. All the coins issued during the Bar Kokhba War were overstruck on silver tetradrachms and drachms of Antioch, Tyre, Caesarea, and Cappadocia, as well as official Roman denarii as well. So a lot of times you can see the undertypes on some of these coins, which is kind of cool. They literally heat up the metal and restrike them. And so what I really love about these larger tetradrachms by Bar Kokhba, and Bar Kokhba was a Jewish general at the time who led this revolt against the Romans at the time. And so because the Romans were really putting their foot down, Hadrian was really putting his foot down on the Jewish people. And so they just were fed up and revolted again. And so here you have the great Jewish temple. And the one I really like is the one on top. It has what they call the wavy line. And that is supposed to possibly represent the golden vine that hung above the temple doors, and people would hang golden grapes and all kinds of gold from the vine during the holidays, filling the temple with gold and silver from the Jews. And if you go to the next slide, built the Colosseum. So this is issued by Titus in 81 AD, I believe, if memory serves me correctly. This is a sestertius. There's only a few coins that actually have the Colosseum on it. There's the Titus issue of like this. There's a Domitian issue, which there's only 12 known of. There is a Septimius Severus issue, or Severus Alexander issue in a middle bronze. There's a gold one as well by, I believe, Severus as well. I think there's one under Gordian III as well. So there's not too many of them, and those other ones I mentioned are extremely rare. The Titus issue is going to be the most prevalent out there. There's maybe about 80 of them in existence, but a very famous coin, very popular type. And what we talked about earlier, who cares about the reverse? It's all about the obverse on this coin. So those are our favorites. There's obviously a gazillion more out there I could have talked about. You know, if you guys want to put in the comments what your favorite is, go for it.